My name's Sarah Stone Francisco, and I'm going to offer up a few basics of arm balancing, and we're going to use Bakasana, or crow pose, as the example today. The 3 points that I want to touch on are hand placement, stacking, and weight distribution. So the hand placement in any arm balance is critically important. If you're going to be spending a lot of time on your hands, you want to protect your wrists. And the way that you do that is by distributing the weight through your hands evenly throughout the whole hand. There's a tendency to roll to the outside of the wrist, and that looks a lot like this. You can see how there's some space underneath the base of the index finger. You want to make sure that you don't have any space under there at all, and that you're actually pressing down very firmly through the base of the index finger. Additionally, you want the fingers to be spread as wide as you can. Think like a gecko. And then pressing down through all 10 fingertips. The more you distribute the weight through your hands, and this is still on hand placement, but the more you distribute the weight evenly throughout your hands, the easier it's going to be, because you're going to be recruiting as many muscles throughout your arms and your shoulders and your back as possible, making it a lot easier. The second thing that I want to talk about is stacking. Your bones are so much stronger than your muscles. And if you try to balance using mostly muscle, it's going to be less stable, and it's going to take a lot more effort, and you're going to get a lot more tired. But when you can stack things one on top of the other, you can even feel it when you're sitting or standing there. If we walk around like this, it takes a lot more effort, it takes a lot more strength, and thus we end up having a lot more strain through the neck and the back. But when you align your spine and you're able to stack bone on top of bone, obviously the vertebrae has its own curve, but when you can use that curve in proper alignment and things are stacked, there's an effortlessness or even a weightlessness that comes about. And so in Bakasana, that means that you want, after you set up your hands, shoulders distance apart, spreading the fingers really wide, you want to make sure that you start out with the elbows stacked right over the wrists. You certainly don't want to be farther than the wrists, because that'll put a lot of effort on the wrists, too much effort. And you don't want to be behind, because there's just no balance there. You're having to use a lot more effort to do that. And you really want to make sure that the elbows are stacked right over the wrists. And that way, as much weight transfer as possible gets transferred through the bones, down through the hands into the earth. So you've got your fingers spread wide, as much contact with your hands on the earth as possible, elbows directly over the wrists, and then begin in a squat by bringing the knees to the upper arms. To get into the position, you see I bend my elbows to come meet my knees a little bit, but then as I move forward up onto my tiptoes, I find that place of weight distribution now, where my elbows are stacked over my wrists, and I've got an equal amount of weight in front of my wrists, and an equal amount of weight behind my wrists. And so from there, I can lift up one and then the other foot. So a way to kind of approach this that's a bit of a workaround, if that's seeming like it's not as easily doable. There's a lot of bandha action, so you want to really lift and engage Mula Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha. You're really lifting up also to feel that the hips are lifting up. In the very beginning, something that I did, which I then had to break out of, it was a habit that I had to break, but it at least gave me the feeling of getting my feet up off of the ground, which was a really empowering feeling. I would squat my legs out wide, I would open my elbows up, and I would use that to balance my shins. And then, that way, I was able to take advantage of the stacking when I lacked perhaps the abdominal and bandha control. So I don't necessarily recommend that unless you're at a point where you just feel like, I just want to get my feet up off the ground. I completely get that. It is a habit that you'll then have to break. And if you start from the proper alignment of knees as high up onto the arms as possible, and then just work on shifting weight forward a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and using your fingers and your wrists, the weight between them to help balance you, you'll end up feeling a lot more control a lot faster. I hope that was helpful. There's a lot more to share, and so I hope to offer more of these in the future.